Great way to start.
Won't you listen to reason? Will you open your eyes? It's a wonder what you'll find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion for the sake of the world. This delusion has gotta go. Yeah.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Atheist Experience. We are live. It is Sunday, September 13th, 2012. I'm Matt Dillahunty. I am joined this week with a very special guest, Teresa MacBain.
Hey.
Currently with American Atheist. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt. Glad
All
to be
right.
here.
For those of you who weren't aware, this is a 2-hour show today. We just no expenses spared to make sure that Teresa gets all the time that she needs. We got really lucky with studio requests, and Shelley did a great job of requesting an extra hour. So we're going to get a 2-hour show, which means we'll get to talk to you a little bit, and we'll get to do a lot of callers. Real quickly, since we don't actually do all of the announcements that we used to do, some quick notes on upcoming events. She and I will actually both be at Skepticon in November in Missouri, along with a lot of other great people. You can find out more. Just Google Skepticon 5, and you'll find the whole list of everybody who's going to be there, when and where, everything else. Also, the Texas Free Thought Convention is coming up 1 month from this past weekend, October 18th, 19th, 20th, something like that. And you can go to texasfreethoughtconvention.com for more information about that. But quickly, I want to get, for the people who aren't familiar with you, you're like this CNN, Fox News sensation since the Reason Rally.
I don't know that I'm a sensation. I've been on the shows. I don't know that I actually enjoyed it either. CNN was okay. Fox News, never, ever again.
So, for those who aren't aware, Teresa is a former Methodist minister who was a part of the Clergy Project. You may be familiar with the Clergy Project because we had Jerry DeWitt on. It's something put together for clergy who are non-believers and either still in the pulpit or in the process of getting out. And
trying to get out.
And Teresa was involved in that project as well, the first female graduate, although I don't need to know why we need to make distinctions like that. But
I don't know, because
But you
I guess
graduated.
female clergy are kind of a rarity, so maybe female atheist clergy are even more rare. Who knows?
We know of one.
Yeah, we know of one. I know of more, but I can't talk about that.
Okay.
They're still in the closet.
So really quickly, why don't you kind of give us a rundown? I know she was gracious enough to come and give us a talk yesterday before the Bat Cruise, which was awesome. I don't know why you missed it, but we had a great time at Astor's Follies afterwards. But give us a quick rundown of kind of your history and how you got to where you are now, if you could.
Okay. Summing up decades is really, really hard, so I'll try to make it brief, which I was a preacher, so brief is not in my vocabulary. But I was raised in the Deep South in Alabama. My dad was a Baptist preacher. I grew up in the church from probably before I was born. I'm sure my parents had me there while Mom was pregnant every Sunday. And I'd know for a fact, 2 weeks after I was born, I was in church and didn't miss. I was the little kid that always got the achievement medals. If you grew up in church, especially Baptist church, you know you got pins for perfect attendance. And I was one who had those. Unlike some preachers' kids that kind of are on the wild side, I was not. I was 100% sold out, devoted, committed, wanted to grow up, knew from early age that I was called by God to be in the ministry. I shared yesterday that I had a little red Gideon's New Testament, and I used it. 3rd grade, I can remember trying to evangelize and share the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ with all my friends. I went on through my teen years, my young adult years, just following that path. I mean, never straying from it. I was 100% sold out in it for everything that it was worth. But there were questions. I can remember in early middle school that I had questions about different things that were in the Bible that didn't seem to line up, that didn't match. So I went to my dad and asked him about it. And he basically, it's kind of a long little story, but basically what happened was he told me that this questioning showed that my faith was weak. And you don't want to have weak faith if you're a Christian. and that actually weak faith is a sin, which meant that I had to put away all those questions and doubts. I had to just throw them away, stuff them somewhere deep inside me, because the number one thing I wanted to do in my life was be pleasing to God and serve Him. And if you're a sinner, you can't do that. I don't know if you knew that or not, but I went on from there, went to school, went to a Baptist college, got a degree in education, taught in Christian schools only, because that's where God had called me to. And just through a lot of circumstances and progressing and doing what I felt was maturing in my faith, I became more liberal in my theology, eventually wound up in the Methodist Church, where I followed on through to become a pastor in the Methodist Church. And the Methodist Church encouraged me to think. They told me that basically John Wesley said that in the essentials unity, and the non-essentials liberty, and in all things charity. To me that meant as long as I hold to the core tenets of my faith, I can think and explore all those questions I'd been putting away for so many years. And that's exactly what I did. I mean, I jumped in with both feet. Finally I could think about it, finally I could study, finally I could find some answers. And answers are exactly what I found. Over the next several years, probably about a space of 10 years, those answers led me to the point to where last year I realized that my faith was gone, that I didn't have it anymore. And it was really tough. I mean, it wasn't like I came into this to become an atheist, that I woke up one day 5 years ago and said, you know what, I'm just going to be an atheist. That's what I want to do. And I was talking this morning with some of the folks at breakfast. Once I realized I was an atheist, I didn't want to be. I wanted to believe the things I used to believe. I wanted to not know the things that I knew now. But once you know, you can't go back. Once you're out, you don't go back in. So I began with the Clergy Project, working as hard as I could to get out. I took a second job that was a temporary job, full-time, so I'm working 2 full-time jobs, trying to make enough money to put away for my family so that I don't ruin us financially by coming out. And led up to this past March, the American Atheist Convention, an opportunity presented itself for me to share my story at the convention. And what actually happened was I came out as an atheist. And since then, life has been really fun. Been very interesting. A lot of people have supported me in the atheist community. I could never have imagined how much love and care and support. I wouldn't have made it this far if it hadn't been for the community. And just as much hatred and vileness and death threats and, just all good, loving examples of Christian behavior.
And now you have a new job.
I do have a new job it's almost hilarious to me that I now work for American Atheists in New Jersey as a public relations director. But I love it. Best place I've ever worked. Most fair treatment, honest people. And if you're watching and you've never been around atheists, they're pretty honest people, good people.
Yeah.
Amazing, isn't it? Hey, a few years ago, I wouldn't have known that. I wouldn't have thought that.
Sure.
I had preconceived ideas that I'd been taught all my life.
And in my youth, I don't even know that I ever really heard about atheists. I would hear, I've talked before about, I heard Madeline on Phil Donahue one day. My mom came in and turned it off and said, oh, she's an evil atheist person who's trying to, destroy God's country, and you don't listen to that.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me, even though I didn't know what she was talking about at all. And then later on, as I got toward my older teen years, my mom would occasionally talk about secular humanists and how that was just code for evil atheists. And so that was all I knew, and I never really interacted. And yet somehow in my head, I don't know if this was the same for you, there was a distinction between the atheists and non-believers, because the non-believers were the people that we were supposed to go out and win their souls for Christ. And the atheists were the opposition, even though they're really the same exact pool.
Yeah.
It's just that the ones who call themselves atheists tend to know enough that it makes it very difficult to go out and proselytize to them.
Yeah, so when we grew up, our family was so conservative and so strict. We didn't have a TV. We weren't allowed. So the whole thing about Madeline, I didn't find out about her until later when I was taking some evangelism courses so that I could go out and witness to these heathen non-believers and win them to Christ. That's when I found out about Madeline, because she's the wicked person that took prayer out of schools.
Yes.
And really, that's all I ever knew about her. That was enough. prayer needs to be in schools. If kids could pray, which is kind of funny because every time I've ever had a test, you can't tell me you didn't pray.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody needed to help you, but...
And the way that's been portrayed all these years is Madeline took prayer to school, but that's not what happened at all. What happened was she had a court case that went to the Supreme Court that removed government-led mandatory required prayer in Bible reading school. Kids can still pray in school. They can still have their Youth for Christ groups. Nobody could stop them from praying, certainly before a test, but we actually allow Christian kids and other religious groups to meet.
Yeah.
As long as all kids have an opportunity to meet with similar groups. And you can't say, no, you can't have your atheist club, but you can have these, the Catholic club and the Baptist club. But
I was president of Youth for Christ for several years in high school. So, yeah, there was no exclusion. I guess I thought maybe because we were Southern that's just the norm. But no, my kids grew up in different places and they always had their clubs and the See You at the Pole Day and all the different events.
Which now today would take on a whole different meaning. But anyway, we're going to start taking callers here very shortly, but we got a kind of a special treat for everybody. For those who don't know, Madeline Murray O'Hare was the founder of American Atheist and started this in Austin, Texas. And now you're working for American Atheist. This coming year, 2013, will be the 50th anniversary of American Atheist.
Yes.
And every year, American Atheist has a national convention on Easter Sunday, normally, or around then.
Yeah, around Easter Sunday.
And this year's convention will be here in Austin, Texas. Now, I announced that the day after the Reason Rally on this show, and we've been looking forward to it, and I'm going to keep prodding and poking people because Austin's the promised land. I mean, I don't know, there's some people who aren't aware of that yet, but it is, and it'll be the atheist mecca. But we have the world premiere of, nobody's seen this yet, of the promotional video. Oh, it's actually starting behind me. For the convention, roll it if you're ready.
Someone once very aptly said, where faith begins, science ends.
In every single one of the 50 states in this country, the fastest growing religious affiliation is none.
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion.
Real data showing a rise in religion in countries like us positively correlate with a lower quality of life.
The problems of our world can only be solved with knowledge and self-understanding, and only science can teach us those things.
If you're not excited yet, I don't know what to tell you.
Exactly.
Maybe I'll dress up crazy again and see if we can promote this some more. Quickly, though, for the fans of the show who have been taking clips of the show and putting them up on YouTube, first of all, thanks somewhat for that. We do now have an official channel, so we're asking folks not to do that. But most definitely, do not take that clip and put it up anywhere. That's American Atheists. They're going to have it up and be promoting it soon, but we got a sneak peek for you. It's just what happens when you live in the town where the convention's going to be. So, quickly, I want to get to some calls here in a minute. What has been the most difficult part of this whole process for you?
I guess just losing all the people that were important to me. You know, people that have told me, I mean, to my face in email, phone calls, etc., that they don't want to have anything to do with me anymore. And, you know, I had real relationships with them, real deep, abiding relationships, and I still feel attached to them. You know, you can't just turn off a human emotion or a human attachment like that. That's the hardest part, really. And like I said, I've made new friends in the atheist community, but then you also have to remember it takes time to develop really deep friendships. You know, the kind where you have that comfortable silence. You don't really have to say anything, just being in the person's presence is enough. You know, that's really the hardest part for me, is just losing all that.
And we hear that a lot. I mean, one of the things that we end up talking about is churches have had an unfair advantage for years with the tax-free status, but also having a built-in system. If I pack up and move and I'm a religious person, it doesn't take me very long to build an entire new network of individuals to interact with. And the atheist community has been, you know, kind of disadvantaged in that area because we are this marginalized minority that doesn't have access to those things and really weren't very organized or building. And I think that's one of the things that I've enjoyed most over the past 10 years or so that I've been involved with this, is watching smaller communities build and people becoming more vocal and trying to do what we can to build networks. You know, you used to hear all the time that, you know, there's no atheist charities, and there's tons of atheist charities.
Yeah,
there's entire foundations to direct people to atheist charities now. And we're doing better in a lot of areas. We've got a lot of work left that could be done. And it's one of the biggest problems, though, that I see, is that even when you're trying to build these communities and you're trying to help people develop a new network of a new community, they still have to kind of do it on the fly. Nobody has to, or nobody feels generally scared to say, oh yes, I go to First Baptist Church of whatever.
Right, that's
and
exactly
yet
right.
you might be in the Atheist Community of Austin and participating in events and still not be willing to tell anybody outside of there that, oh yeah, I'm part of the Atheist Community of Austin and participate in these events. And until we change the world around, we need to keep building the communities while we change the world around it, so that everybody is safe in saying, you know, yeah, I don't believe that. And maybe it'll change the minds of family members and loved ones who, to the point where, yes, you're no longer a part of their religion, but maybe they don't necessarily have to freak out about it, and it's not the end of the world.
Right, that you're still that same person, even though you think differently. You know, that's the big thing I tried to talk to my family about. I'm still the same person. You've known me for my entire life. I won't tell you how many years that is. But I think differently than you do. That's it. I think differently. Why has that got to be such a huge thing that you're going to cut me completely out of your life? I mean, it's just ridiculous.
And it may be that some of these issues are kind of intractable. It may be that in some cases we're going to have to just, as much as I hate saying it, wait for a generation to kind of die off as the world changes, you know, because people get set in their ways. There's still a grand opportunity with American atheists, with the local communities, with Atheist Alliance for America and Freedom from Religion Foundation, all these groups that are doing things to change the world. And you can actually be a part of all this by getting involved with your local groups and the national groups, and not just at conventions, at your in the pub meetings, at your movie nights and game nights and dinner. Boy, we love to eat. There's dinner after the show tonight, by the way. And I think, where are we going? We are going to Threadgill's. And I can't tell you that you should come down and eat with us, because that would not be right. But we'll be there. And if you stumble by, that's your problem. But let's go ahead and we'll start taking some calls real quick. We've got Alex in Victorville, California. How are you?
Good, Pete. How are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Excellent. Yeah, I called in. You know, I've been actually not challenged, but people have been asking me to call in for over a year now. And finally, I'm like, all right, let me call these guys up, you know, give them a shout out. And so, I mean, I don't know if you guys have time, if you want to hear my story or you want to ask me questions. I don't know the, method you guys use.
Well, normally I'd love to ask, first of all, I have no idea what you believe, but the bigger issue is why. But it said here that you actually had a question about, I don't know, our take on the Bible or something?
Basically, what happened with me is from the age of like 18, I started, called myself a Christian. I went to the Marine Corps boot camp. I declared myself a Christian, went to church there. And then around the age of 23, I came to the conclusion that, you know what, maybe I'm just like freaking imagining everything. I don't know. You know, I just started like, it was like a hardcore reality check. Like, what am I doing here? What's my actual proof? What's my evidence here? Is it just like feeling something in my heart? Or so I just started reading things in the Bible. I'm like, well, that's not true, and that's not. Kind of like that woman where she said she had questions that they couldn't answer. Mm-hmm. I had those questions, and I started asking them, and they're like, well, you don't have any faith. It was almost like scary at what kind of a similar situation it was for me to the past caller. So then I came to a conclusion. I'm like, okay, I'm about to just turn the other way here. But before I do, let me just make sure I've been thorough. And what I mean by that is, I'm like, okay, I'm going to give it one more shot. You know, to me, the New Testament is 195 pages. It's not that long, I figured. I go, let me just read it one more time. But this time I decided, let me do something a little bit differently. Let me actually go for some solitude. Let me not love anything in the world. I'm not saying anything is evil. I can argue and say anything is good and everything is evil at the same time, depending on how the person does it and the circumstances that they, you know, that get them to do certain action. So with me, I started reading Matthew, Luke, all the Gospels again, Acts, Hebrews. I started getting through it, but this time I started like cutting out worldly media. I started cutting out anything of the world, you know, to tell you the truth. I just started shutting it off just for the time I read it, because I figured it said it's a narrow path. Jesus said, follow me. And the first thing he did when he got the Holy Spirit was head into that desert for 40 days straight. Now, that's a lot to ask for. I didn't do that. But the point of it is seeking solitude. I find myself being put...
Are you saying that that you discovered something that's true that way, that can only be discovered that way?
I'm about to get there. So I've probably read about half the gospel at this point again, and I'm roughly in the book of Hebrews. Every day what I would do is I would actually just drop down on my face for an hour and just be quiet. Just bow and just be silent in front of it. So I did that every day, like an hour or two. And I kind of made it like boot camp on myself. I went back to that mentality. I'm like, okay, but what was I asking for? At this point, I was only asking for two things. I said, God, if you want this to work, my quote was, I'm not going to go to church all my life, hoping that when I die, I made the right call. That's just not going to work. If this is going to work, you have to be real to me like you were to Adam. That's what I want. I want you to be as real to me as you were to Adam. And I want what it said in John 17. Father, let them be one. Just as you are in me and I am in you, let them be one with us. So that's the second thing I wrote down on a piece of paper. I go, this is what I'm asking for, God. If you're real, I don't know if you're real, you're hidden from me. That's for sure. So I'm going to give you this benefit of the doubt and say, maybe you're real. But if you're real, I need you to manifest yourself like it says in John 14:21.
Sure. Did that happen?
Yes, it did happen. It happened roughly on the 27th day of asking. And I planned a 40-day thing with him.
Okay.
But I cut everything out for 40 days, including sexual temptation. So...
Okay.
You know, and what I mean by it happened was 26 days. I'm asking for the exact same thing. God seems a billion miles away, man. You know, and that morning, man, I woke up and...
Clearly the new soundboard hasn't fixed everything.
I had a friend who came and slept over. Actually, my mom was getting paranoid, so she invited my best friend to sleep over without asking me, because I hadn't seen anyone. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing at all. It had nothing to do with anyone.
So Alex,
yeah,
how did God manifest himself to you?
That first morning, like I said, I woke up, I just felt like my friend had either drugged me or I was dreaming. Because what I was feeling, words couldn't describe. Forget what I was feeling. It was just pure bliss and ecstasy. That night, I had a dream of Christ.
So hang on,
you know?
Alex. So I asked how God manifested, and you said that you woke up in ecstasy.
Yes.
And what makes you think that's a manifestation of God?
That's a beautiful question. It was when I honestly, and I know you're going to not believe this, and I'm not really concerned about being believed, but it's the truth. Now, when I did wake up in that bliss that first night, I had one dream. That could have been a coincidence, but I had one dream of Jesus walking down my street, 50 feet tall, releasing 7 stars from his right hand, lighting up my street. Then I would read the next day about Jesus being the one who held the 7 stars. I had never heard that before. But then the next day after that, I had another vision. This time I had it wide awake. I'm reading the book of, I jumped into back the book of Daniel, and I'm reading the book of Daniel, and I can't move all of a sudden. I just can't, I'm telling you, it was like, I just can't move, and all of a sudden my eyes are wide open. I'm in my room, and I literally see like a light, kind of like a star, what stars look like, and it kind of opened up, man, and like a display, bro. And I was shown a vision. I've seen Christ that way in the military. I saw angels that day at my house. A couple of weeks later, I would actually see Jesus, like his glorified, like the one John saw in Revelation.
Sure,
it was
sure.
like a fire burning, wide awake.
So Alex, so you had these experiences. I still don't understand how you know that this was God.
Here's how I know that this was God. Because since then, I started preaching right away when that happened to me, the year 2000. I stopped. I completely stopped because no one believed me. I told God, you know what? I love what you've given me, but I'm going to go live my life. And I went and I lived my life for like 8, 9 years, up until 2.5 years ago. I started 9 YouTube channels, and I shot out roughly about, in the last 3 years, 200,000 messages. Now, from those 200,000 people, there was hundreds of people, and I can even send you to people now that have done this. There were previous atheists, bipolar, name it, from all walks of life, who have done this routine. And within the first 3 to 7 days, they start seeing dreams from God about the living water, of what it's going to feel like when they receive it. Personalized messages to them. Even if they stop searching, the dreams keep coming.
Alex, you haven't gotten anywhere near telling me how you know this is God.
Well, people fear solitude. Everyone is codependent on stimuli from the world to make themselves happy, from music to movies. People can't be still anymore.
Yes, and so you cut yourself off from all that, and you had some experience. Now, how do you know that it's
God?
God?
I'm still having it, so 14 years later, every night.
Okay, maybe you should see somebody about that.
But how about all the other people who go through the exact same thing? How about my tears that I had cried?
Okay,
and then they had turned into white bread that was sweet like honey a month later. That I found them again.
Now, Alex, now I think you're not for real.
Okay, now I don't understand why you say that. God is supernatural. Why don't they expect miracles? That's what the problem is.
Well,
no one
we don't. Hang on. I'm going to put you on hold. I'm not hanging up. I'm trying to make use of the phone system so that I don't just start throwing things. When you say that you cried tears that turned into bread, that's a claim about the real world. It would certainly be a manifestation. It would certainly be a miracle. Exactly how did you verify this? Do you have, any sort of investigation?
Listen, at the time, my mom was still living, but now she passed away. Anyway, so what happened was I was like late at night. I'm like, what is this? I started I'm like, why are these pages like this? And I just started scraping it off. Yeah, I got a pile like a quarter size, or maybe a nickel size, but kind of high. I ate like 3/4 of it, and it was amazing. And then I saved some to show my mom, and then she came the next day. I'm like, oh my God, what is this? She's like, what are you talking about? And then I came to shore, and it turned brown, and it was bitter and nasty. It would completely changed form the next day, and I was like, what the hell happened? I would find out 4 months later, manna goes bad overnight and spoils.
You have anything that you wanted to ask real quick?
I have no words. I have no words.
So Alex,
I can tell you things that are much more crazier than that. You definitely think I'm insane. But the bottom line is, if somebody, like I told God, I want Jesus to be as real to me as you were to Adam, and I want my perception fixed.
Yeah, I'm pretty
so
sure
I
that
told him, and that's what he did.
Alex, I'm pretty sure that having feelings of ecstasy and crying tears of bread does not make God as real to you as he supposedly was to Adam, who he walked with in the garden. Big difference there.
I do understand that, and I'm telling you that not just his presence, but I feel like we're one. I feel like...
Yeah, and you know what, Alex?
What happened? There's like a helmet.
Alex?
Both of us wore it, and the switch went on, and we became one.
Yeah, and Alex, not only should nobody else accept that something is true just because you feel like you're one, but you shouldn't either. It's not rational to just go with, hey, I feel like this is true, therefore it's true.
I understand that point. That's why I didn't seek God in the church, because it made no sense to me.
Yeah, I don't.
Almost like the Native Americans go on a vision quest when they're young.
Yeah.
The Aborigines did the same. that solitude, that going away and being somber and completely disconnected is a terribly lonely feeling. And
Yeah.
no one wants to go through that. If you even give about 3 days,
I tell you what,
like
let
that, it's asking
me,
you if this
for
is real or
crying out
something.
loud, I'm gonna put you on hold for just a second. Let me ask you this way.
Sure.
So you're pretty much an advocate that the Bible is generally true, correct? That it,
I'm an advocate of not accepting that, though. I swear. If I tell people, if you believe in God going into this, you're a liar.
okay, great.
I'm
But
confused.
do you believe
I'm confused.
do you believe the Bible gives an accurate picture of the God that you think is real?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and do you think that this is a loving God who wants people to know Him?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so why on earth would a loving God who wants people to know Him hide away and make people starve themselves and deprive themselves of sensory input for 27 days and then have them cry tears of bread, none of which can be verified, and then their only appeal to this is, hey, I feel like we're one? Why would any loving God work that way? Why aren't you worthy of the same Damascus Road experience that Saul had?
Who says I haven't? I'm not. I could see.
Well,
I could tell you it came to me.
if
in
you-
the flesh.
if
I could
you
tell
had-
it's 5'10".
If you had an experience like that and instead you started with, I felt a feeling of ecstasy and cried tears of bread, you started with the wrong story.
That's what it says will happen first in John. Again, it says, and rivers of living water will burst out from your belly. That's what made it important to me. I was into Bruce Lee. I was into meditation.
Hey, Alex.
Buddhism.
Alex,
Before
Alex, I know we have a 2-hour show today, but we're full of callers, and I'm going to move on.
I understand. Is there any way I can personally email you and discuss you? 'Cause I tried. No one messaged me back. I understand. You guys are booked.
Sure, you can email tv@atheist-community.org.
What should I put in the subject line to make sure you get it?
Oh, AETV or NPR. Thanks so much for suggesting that. It gets right past
You're
the
welcome.
spam.
Can you tell me again what to write in the subject line?
AETV.
AETV. Got it. Thanks again, and have a blessed day. All you guys are very loving. Some of the best people I've met have been atheists, to tell you the truth.
Me too.
Me too.
No?
Me too.
All right. Let's try something else. James in Alma, Arkansas. How are you?
All right. How are you doing today?
We're pretty good.
So, I was wanting to see what your opinion is on the Bible. Do you think someone wrote it, just imaginary story or something?
Go ahead.
That's a huge question. Yeah, people wrote it. Everybody that reads the Bible, the first thing you see when you see a chapter is that this is the Gospel of John, right? The Gospel of Matthew, Gospel of Mark. So people wrote down those pages. Now, did those actual people write it? I don't know. Even people who are still Christians and scholars don't know. They'll tell you, well, it's been supposed that Mark wrote it or Matthew wrote it or somebody wrote it. But they don't know for certain. Do I believe that God inspired them to write it? No. Have I believed that in the past? Of course I have. I mean, I grew up believing that. I grew up thinking the Bible was absolutely inerrant, infallible, that even the thoughts that you had about the Bible were inspired by God. But over the years I learned that, that's just not true. That a group of people got together, wrote it down, how it came through the centuries to be presented to us, you need several years probably to get the whole story on that. But yeah, people wrote it, just like Homer wrote the Iliad. Any other book, Stephen King wrote a lot of novels, which I put a lot more stock in than I do in the Bible. He's a good author, by the way, if you're looking for a book to read.
Yeah. I have a lot of respect for you atheists, too. I noticed all the other callers that call in, they just keep talking over y'all, and they give you a hard time in the world. They talk about you and stuff like that. And
Well, it's not always their fault. There's a problem with the audio and the phone lines in the studio, which doesn't always make it easy for people to hear when somebody else is talking.
Oh, okay. I didn't know there was a problem with it.
Yep. Is that all you wanted to know, or did you have anything else about that subject that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I was going to ask you. Would you say that there is a possibility that something exists out there? A possibility. I'm not making a claim. I'm just asking you. Do you think there could be a possibility that something exists?
Is there a possibility that something exists? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Probably my answer may not be what you think it is, because something is ill-defined. I mean, if you ask me, do you think there's a possibility that something exists? I'd say there's a certainty that something exists. But you mean something different when you say something, don't you? Don't you mean something godlike? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah. Do you think there's a possibility, even though it can't be proven? Is it possible somehow? A possibility, you know?
And I don't know, because I don't know that it's sufficiently defined for me to actually determine whether or not it's possible. In the really wide scope of anything's possible, sure, there's the possibility that there may be something along those lines, but those lines are potentially contradictory. I mean, we know gods have been manufactured out of whole cloth. We know that religions have been manufactured in the same way, even the ones that don't necessarily have gods. Look at Scientology, for example. But you can look at these things and say, oh, well, everybody seems to be kind of reaching for the same thing. Therefore, there's some grander thing out there that may be true that they're all trying to touch. And I would say that it's also possible that there's nothing out there that is grander that they're trying to touch, but that this is a natural extension of ignorance about the universe, fear, the need to make up stories to answer questions because we're uncomfortable with not knowing. You don't have to go too far from, hey, I'm a human being and I have these capabilities. Wouldn't it be cool if I had additional capabilities, which is how we get superheroes in the comic books? Those superheroes in the comic books aren't that far removed from gods. It's just a hop, skip, and a jump of, hey, here's a man, here's a Superman, here's the superest man of all. And I don't see any reason why that needs to be true in order for somebody to think of it.
Right.
Let me ask you a question, James. It sounds like you're genuinely asking questions in yourself, and you're honestly asking us questions because you're wanting some answers, right? Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Well,
that's correct.
See, that was part of my process, and I never felt that I was safe to ask those questions. And once I started asking them, I didn't know where to turn to find answers. If you're thinking about the Bible and you want some good answers, can I mention a book specifically? Sure. Okay. Then we'll make sure I didn't cross a line. Bart Ehrman, E-H-R-M-A-N, is an author that I started reading when I had questions early on, and he really deals with the Bible. He deals with some other stuff, but just look at his things that deal with the Bible, how we got the scriptures, those kinds of things, and I think that you'll find some answers. I mean, if you're really open-minded and you want to know what the truth is, and you're committed to thinking through it and finding the answers for yourself, that's where I think I would start. Do you have any other suggestion maybe that you could give him?
Yeah, there's a lot of, I love a lot of Ehrman stuff. Jesus Interrupted, Lost Christianity is just probably my favorite of the ones that he wrote. You don't actually have to run out and buy books. One of the best resources actually is on the internet, and that's infidels.org, and they have both a modern library and a historic library, and it includes stuff from Robert Greene Ingersoll in the historic library, but in the modern library you've got people like Richard Carrier and Terrell Phil and others who've written tons of articles up there that go through this. And one of the nice things is that they will, in most of the cases, go through and actually tell you how that they arrived at the conclusions they arrived at, if in fact they arrived at any conclusion. Because one of the things that we've all had to try to get comfortable with is the idea that the answer for now maybe I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't claim to know for certain that there are no gods. Atheism isn't the assertion that there absolutely are no gods. It's the rejection of the claim that gods do exist. It's like saying,
because it ain't proven yet.
Yeah. Well, there are many reasons. That's the ideal reason. Would be, hey, I'm a skeptic and I'm a critical thinker, and I've evaluated the evidence and I've found it wanting, and so I cannot yet accept this. Now, I also am in the position where personally I believe that there aren't any gods, but I don't, don't believe this to, an absolute certainty. But it has a lot more to do with looking at the universe in which we live and how it doesn't seem to be consistent with the kind of universe we would expect given the various gods that people have claimed. And it's also, we know, as I mentioned before, that people have invented gods and religions out of whole cloth. Look at Mormonism. But the other aspect of this is that, it was really easy to realize that these gods are defined in ways that are mutually exclusive. They can't all be correct, but they could all be incorrect. And the ones that posit a manifesting God, somebody who interacts with reality, who, for example, answers prayer or provides direction in people's lives, or makes you feel wonderful and cry tears of bread, those sorts of gods involve testable claims. And whenever we've tested those claims, those gods have failed. Now, it's possible, the way I've described it before is that there's two different categories of gods. There's gods that don't exist, and then there's gods that exist. And of the gods that exist, there's several other categories. And there's the ones that actually do manifest in reality, and the ones that don't manifest in reality. Now, an existing God that doesn't manifest in reality is indistinguishable from the God that doesn't exist. You can go back in the archives and watch Tracy Harris's transcendental dice argument or analogy, where she had 3 jars of dice. One had real physical dice, one was empty, and the other one had transcendental or transcendent dice. They were existent transcendent dice, but they are indistinguishable. Now, until there's some way to actually identify the God, you can't say anything. But yet people have, by and large, posited gods that do manifest in reality, or they claim to manifest in reality. Those are testable claims. And by the way, how could anybody be talking about a God they believe in that doesn't manifest in reality? They had to have some criteria by which they came by this information. If they didn't, then their God is just as vacuous and manufactured as if I made up a God right now on the spot. And so when I look at all of them, the odds for the world that we live in seem to strongly favor the idea that gods are fictions invented by people and don't actually map to anything real.
Yeah, I'm a Baptist and I go to church, and I question it. I don't say for a fact, well, God's real, because you can't prove it or disprove it until if it's disproven, I'd quit going to church. If I knew there wasn't no God for a fact.
See,
but
I would
proof or disprove yet.
Yeah, and I'd say that what you're doing there is kind of a shifting of the burden of proof, because you say if it was disproved, you'd stop going to church, but you're going to keep going until it's disproved. And I'd ask you why you don't go to all the other churches whose religions haven't been disproved. It's a bit of favoritism and special pleading for the religion that you're currently in.
I'll do visit other churches as well.
Sure. But are you going to Hindu temples and Muslim mosques? Have you investigated Scientology, and are you going to attend all these churches until they're disproved? The point that I'm making is that the rational position is not to believe something until it's disproved and not to attend church until it's disproved, but it's to not believe something until it is proved and not attend a church until it's proved.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, otherwise you're living in kind of a state of cognitive dissonance where you've shifted the burden of proof and you've made it very easy. You're playing favorites with the idea that there is a God. You're going to give it the benefit of the doubt until somebody can disprove it. One of the things in science that we've talked about before on the show is the idea of the null hypothesis. And one of the key factors of a null hypothesis is that it can never be proved. And so the null hypothesis, there are no gods, could never be proved.
Yeah, they got a long way to go before they prove it. The Bible doesn't certainly prove it.
Right. We agree on that one.
We're definitely in the same boat there.
I'm open-minded, I'm not closed-minded or anything like that. That's why I call in and talk to y'all, because y'all got a belief system, and want to see what y'all's opinion on it and where y'all thought about it. You don't get nowhere arguing with people and fighting with them. That don't get you nowhere on that stuff.
Well, sometimes it does.
Yeah, a healthy debate is always good. And,
Yeah.
I really respect you, James, because you've called in and you're not being belligerent and you're asking questions. And when you were first talking, I could recognize the part of me that began, I don't know how many years ago, but that questioning part, seeking, wanting answers, and not being afraid of the place it's going to take you. So that'd be, I mean, I guess we're kind of winding up here, but that'd be my encouragement to you, and I know Matt would say the same thing. Just keep questioning, keep looking for answers, and don't stop until you find some, and then once you find those answers, I guarantee you're going to find more questions.
But I will say that there's a benefit. You say that you're going to keep going to church until it's disproved. Well, first of all, read the Bible, read the information that's critical of the Bible. But I've had teenagers in particular email me and say, I'm an atheist, I don't believe any of this stuff, but my folks make me go to church anyway. And I have the same piece of advice for them every time they say it, which could prove slightly useful to you. I don't get the impression that somebody's making you go. But what I've told them is go and take lots and lots of notes and ask lots and lots of questions, and ask, in their case, ask their parents questions, but in your case, ask the minister questions. Don't necessarily accept the answers that you're given. Think about it more and ask more questions. And I tend to tell teenagers this that are being forced to go to church, because I think that eventually their parents might stop forcing them to go, just to avoid the questions.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
Yeah, keep questioning everything, James. Thanks a lot for calling.
Thank you.
All right. From the UK, Sebastian, how are you?
Hey.
Are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Thanks for waiting.
All right. Hey, how are you guys doing?
We're great.
Good, yeah, good.
All right. Well, I heard you talking earlier on about my question, which is, I just want to tell you guys about that. I sort of feel like I've been raised almost religiously as an atheist. But I think that you might have been, I think that the screener might have put it in the screen a little bit differently to how I mean, because the way you said it, it sort of sounded like, I was raised as a crazy psychopath trying to kill.
Why don't you just tell us what you're talking about, and we can go from there?
Yeah, okay. Well, it's not that I've been raised to, despise all religious people, but I've just always been told, there is no God, that's a fact, we know that for sure, and then, etc., etc. But I now realize that that's not true. I'm still definitely a strong atheist, but I still sort of have these feelings, even though I know they're not true, that religious people can be, less intelligent or inferior to me.
Sure.
So I was just wanted to talk a bit about that.
Well, I'd say, first of all, the people who tried to tell you that we know this for a fact, that there are no gods, it seemed to me to be overstating the case quite a bit.
Yeah.
And while I am most definitely, and I've said this many times, I am most definitely an enemy of religion, but I am not an enemy of religious people. As a matter of fact, I would consider most of what we do to be a friend, being a true friend to religious people, which is to question the dogma that religions spew out and to encourage people to question more as well. I was a fundamentalist Christian. I was a Southern Baptist for the majority of my life. Teresa was in the same position. So we're coming at it from the other side, and I've said before, my IQ didn't go up when I became an atheist. It's a process of thinking and having access to information I didn't have before, and considering that information from a different perspective, one that attempts to eliminate as much bias and preconceptions as possible. So yeah, anybody who's advocating, be an enemy to religion all day long, but not to religious people. And it's often hard to make that distinction, because it's so intrinsic to who they are. It's their core values, and you can't insult their religion without them taking it personally.
Right. And it's almost as if you even make the statement that you don't believe the same as them, there's some type of barrier that just can't be breached. They can't have anything to do with you. You can't break through it. Not everybody, but generally that's kind of the case. And there's an instant hatred that it just befuddles me as to why that has to be. Why can't I sit and have, like the caller that was on before, we had a good conversation with this young person. I say young person, that makes me sound old. Let me back that up. We had a good conversation with this person who's about my age. And seriously seeking, seriously questioning. And that's all I ask of anybody. Think about it. Don't tell me what Billy Graham said about something, or T.D. Jakes, or Moses. Tell me what you've thought about, what you've dug out, what you've researched, and show it to me. Show me what you found. And if you can do that, you know, like you said, we're questioning people, we're investigative, we think that there are answers, but those answers are we're still looking, you know? It's just like if you think back, what, a couple hundred years ago, even maybe 1,000 years ago, think about the things that have changed since then. The Bible itself states that the earth is flat. People thought the earth was flat. If you say today that the earth is flat, somebody's going to revoke your high school diploma. I mean, it's just, we don't.
Or they should.
Or they should, you're exactly right. I guess it depends on where you went to high school.
Yeah.
So this progress of learning and this progress of education, if we weren't open to think and we weren't open to question and we stayed closed-minded and dogmatic about things all our lives, we'd still be living in caves in the Stone Age.
Mm-hmm. So did we get... Go ahead.
Yeah, like you said, Matt, you said that your IQ didn't go down or anything when you stopped being Christian. Yeah,
well, it might have gone down, I don't know.
I think it might even be this show that kind of made me seriously start to think about Christian and other religious people's being equal to me in all ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, even before that, I guess elementary school was a Christian. But I suppose mainly, even though I know that they are not inferior or anything, I still sort of get the feeling sometimes that like I said, they are.
I can understand that, and in the course of doing this show over, I don't know, it's been probably close to 7 years I've been on here now. I've taken lots of calls from believers, and we've tried many different approaches. You could go back and you could put together a montage of calls where myself or someone else on the show hand-walked someone through an argument for 20, 30, 40 minutes. And you could find other calls where I said they were being an idiot or were an idiot, although I've changed my phrasing on that a little bit, and hung up on them rather quickly. I definitely understand the feeling that you're talking about and the frustration, and it kind of comes, somebody once asked me back before I was married if I would date someone who was a believer. And I said that I don't necessarily rule out the possibility, but that I have a bit of a problem with it because, to me, the foundation of a good relationship is respect. And I have a hard time respecting an individual who believes something that is so departed from the way I understand reality. Mm-hmm. And so I understand when this gets fed back to me as well from believers, because it's the same view. They have a worldview, and I'm divorced from it. Mm. And keeping that in my mind is probably, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are occasions where I'm a raging asshole up here, and I've been condescending and arrogant, and I've tried to make sure that people get as good as they give, because I realize that I benefited from people who provided information, and it's the reason why I do this show, the reason why the ACA does this show. But there are a number of different categories of believers. There are individuals who simply haven't been presented with the information at all, the ones who were raised in sheltered religious environments in particular. Then there are the ones who've been presented with the information, but not in a way that is accessible or amenable to them changing their minds. And then there are others who have been presented with the information over and over and over again, and steadfastly revel in their ignorance, and then go out to preach it to other people. And here I'm talking about people like Ray Comfort, like every apologist you've ever seen in a debate ever. There's no way that William Lane Craig can do that many debates and have accurate information presented to him over and over again, and have his fallacies pointed out over and over again, and still claim, I think that they're sincere in their beliefs, but I think that they are knowingly, on many occasions, dishonest in how they present it, because they have a different goal than I do. My goal is to find the truth, and to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. Their goal is to convince people that they're right and convert people to their religion. They begin with a premise that poisons everything they say and think. Those people, I don't have any respect for. I'm happy. I like Ray. I'd be happy to talk to Ray. I'd be happy to, have more conversations with him. It's frustrating, and I think he's a nice guy, and I think he's generally honest. But I have a hard time anymore saying that he's actually generally honest. And so I don't put all believers in the same bucket. There are some, and then there are, by the way, there's the other category, who are lying and know they are lying, and they're doing it either for money or power or prestige. And these are the prosperity gospel folks, the faith healers like Popoff that have already been exposed, who should have, by the way, vanished into obscurity, and yet is back with a ministry as big or bigger than it ever was, which should be an embarrassment in the modern era where everybody has access. We're reaching a point where almost everybody should have access to information such that they are, as the Bible would say, without excuse.
Exactly.
All right, well, you mentioned that, I was going to say something about something you said, but now I've forgotten.
That's because I talk for a long time.
Well, anyway, I do want to say I'm reading The God Virus, which you promoted a few years ago on the show. And I sort of find that in the book, Darrell Ray wrote that he religious. It's their whole personality changes, and I just think that that's wrong, because he says it infects like their entire mind, but it really only really only does stuff to that subject of religion.
Yeah, well, no, I think it's different for different people. I mean, I've said before that the reason the beliefs matter are because they inform actions, and our actions have consequences, and every false thing you have in your head affects the way your brain processes other information. So I have met people whose personality has dramatically changed by either adopting or abandoning even a religion. I also know people who do a pretty good job of keeping their religion separate from everything else, in that it doesn't blatantly affect other decisions that they make. Oh yeah, I believe in God, but science trumps that, so I'm going to use science. Or my values about human rights trump even what my religion says about God. So they've invented their own theology. And there's, I've said there's probably as many different versions of Christianity as there are Christians. But I've seen people whose entire personality has been changed. I wouldn't take Darrell's statement to necessarily be as broad brush as you might be doing it now.
Right. Well, I just want to say one more thing, and then I'll get off the air, let someone else do some talking. Yeah, I know you probably would rather I said this in email, but since I'm on the air, I might as well say it. Yeah, I just want to thank you for the show. It's really great because just like a couple of hours ago, I finished doing my religious studies homework, where we had to make some comments on the transcendental and cosmological argument. And thanks to you guys, I was able to rip them apart.
Great. Well, thanks so much for saying so. And you're in luck, because we have a huge studio audience this week, which includes almost everybody who's involved with the show. I think Don had to leave. We were getting some pictures. So everybody involved with the show heard that, and we're very grateful that people find what we do here useful. So thanks, Sebastian. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. All right, well, see you. Bye.
Cheers. So we're queuing up more callers, and oh, wow. Lots of questions coming down the pipe.
Lots of questions, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say something about that last caller before we move on. Do you think it's possible that these apologists that are out there, Lee Strobel and others, are so dogmatic about what they're saying is because they're trying to convince themselves of it?
I think that's a huge part of it, and it reminds me very much of the psychics.
Yeah.
Because I think psychics fit into similar categories, where there are individuals who are knowingly deceptive, and they know they're lying, and they know they're doing this for money, and they know they're frauds. And then there are others who, through the process of confirmation bias and everything else, some of them start off as frauds and then begin to believe their own hype because it's you know, the cold reading and stuff is a skill that they can develop, and all of a sudden, wow, I couldn't possibly be this good at it. There must be something more to it.
Exactly.
And I think we see the same thing in religions, where you may see people who have an elated feeling and feel that God is touching them in their not naughty bits. And then they go out and they witness and they do what it is that they think they're supposed to be doing for God, and they see results from it. And then they go to the Bible and they read, you know, by their fruits you'll know them.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
this all becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy or a self-feeding delusion.
Right.
I think, and that's why you're going to find people in all different categories along those lines.
Yeah, because that's where I was at. I mean, when I was working through this stuff, like I said earlier, I didn't want it to be true, that I didn't believe the things that were there, so I worked that much harder to say them and to put them out there and to believe them and to be that much more, that much stronger in my doctrine and in what I was saying.
Yeah.
But all the while I'm saying all these big and mighty words and making all these claims inside, I'm fighting to believe it.
And see, I didn't set it out as a goal to become an atheist and wouldn't have, and wasn't particularly interested in it, but at the time that it happened, when I finally got to that point where I realized I didn't believe, I had spent so long, I mean, this was a lengthy process. It was 18 months and some change, where I was seriously studying and desperately trying to prove that my religion was true in order to be able to witness. At the moment when I realized, and I say it as a moment, it wasn't an epiphany, it was, it's not like one day I woke up and said this, but it was like one day I woke up and I was okay saying it, which is two different things.
Yeah, that is two different things.
And so I didn't have it as a goal, but when it happened, it was just kind of a relief. It was kind of, all these doubts that I've had all these years, I had good reason for those doubts. And the people who were desperately trying to assuage those doubts didn't have good reason to do so.
Yeah.
And, I know that we get email from people who have been still plagued with the fear of hell, or a sense of loss over the possibility of an afterlife and things like that. I didn't suffer those things. I know people who do, and my friend Marlene Winnell, who's a psychologist, has been working with people along with Darrell Ray and others who've now started the Therapist Project.
Secular Therapist
Project for helping people who are suffering from religious trauma syndrome and people who are having difficulty after leaving their religion.
Yeah. Yeah,
emotionally, it can be taxing. The thing you're talking about, where you lose your entire support group.
Yeah.
That enough is enough to cripple people. You talked about it yesterday.
I did. I have really had a hard few weeks. I mean, I moved away by myself to take a new job, and my husband's not come up, and there's just a lot going on besides the fact that I've come out. And I think it was last week I had an epiphany, pardon the pun, that what's happening in my life is the equivalent of everybody that I've loved and cared for and had relationships with for so many years. It was as if they were all involved in a tragic accident and taken out of my life immediately at one time. And I'm having to grieve over hundreds of people. And just knowing that gave me permission to do that, to grieve. And that kind of let me know that that's what was going on in my life, that I'm grieving, that I've had this incredible loss, and that it's okay for me to be sad about it. And that it will take me a little bit of time. I'll make new friends, I'll develop new relationships, I'll have new ties, and I'll have community, which I have community now, but it's also okay for me to feel bad about the people, even though they've hurt me, even though they've treated me really badly.
Absolutely. And I know, just so that people get an idea that there's all sorts of different paths into and out of religion and everything else, I didn't experience that level of grief, in part because kind of early on I realized the risk. First of all, I'd been kind of backslidden for a number of years, and I wasn't as involved in the church at the time as certainly as an active minister would be.
Exactly.
But the other part of this was about recognizing personal responsibility in that, yes, I'm the one who has changed, and so I have changed the nature of our relationship, and I will own that. Doesn't mean it's my fault any more than it would be my fault if, I got a disease that separated me from other people or whatever. I mean, you become convinced I'm not at fault for what I believe.
Right.
I didn't choose this. These are This is the process. And so I recognized rather quickly the people who are willing to abandon me and hate me and never talk to me again because of this, they're not the people that I'm interested in maintaining relationships with. It's sad that I have lost some of those relationships, but what I've lost couldn't have been maintained even if I had done what a lot of atheists do, which is hide the fact that I'm an atheist and keep pretending.
Yeah,
because
that's
then I
true.
would have been
That's very
living
true.
a very false life, and at the point where if it did come out, then it would be worse because now I've been lying to them for 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, that's true, and that's, I mean, those are good points to make. I had a few months where I was still in the pulpit and I was still preaching and trying, like I said, working a couple of jobs and trying to find my way out, and just the emotional stress, the desperation. I mean, I couldn't think clearly. I would leave church and be physically ill. So I can't imagine having to maintain a relationship, maintain a friendship with you for 10 or 15 years, knowing that I had this deep, dark secret that if you found out, then it would explode. I mean, it would be very, very bad, like you said.
I mean, granted, I was not out to my parents even when I started doing this show, but that was because I had in my head this kind of grand process of, you know, how I was going to explain it to them. It was, in fact, a way of continuing to hide that, you know, for fear, because I didn't want to hurt my parents. Who wants to hurt their parents?
Who wants to hurt anybody, really?
And I know them well enough to know, or knew them well enough at the time to know that this was not something they were going to take particularly well. But I also had to be. I had to be true to who I was, which is why from the very beginning there was no anonymity. When I was writing articles online, I was doing it in my own name, and when I did the show, I did it in my own name. Now I wish I'd have come up with a name that was slightly easier to spell and pronounce. You know.
Yeah, I know. Every time I have to write your name on some kind of press release or something, I have to double check to make sure that Dillahunty is spelled correct.
Yeah.
Nice, easy name.
You'll get it.
Yeah. I got it now. I just have to double check, because if I put it in print and Matt Dillahunty is spelled wrong, then I'm going to hear from Matt Dillahunty.
No, you won't hear from me. You might hear from somebody else.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got Sean in Fresno. How are you?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Thanks for waiting, and welcome to hour 2 and some change of the show.
Thank you. Okay, I just wanted to call in and share an experience real quick and then ask a question so you guys can get on to other callers.
Sure.
Basically, I know the call screener put it on your thing there, but I was invited to a family dinner by someone I knew, and they wanted me to say grace or lead the prayer, and I'm an atheist, by the way, obviously. And I didn't want to. I would have been fine just bowing my head and closing my eyes, but I didn't want to lead the prayer because one thing, I didn't know the Lord's Prayer by heart, which dumbfounded them, by the way. And also, I share your position on Christianity, and I just didn't want to participate in that. And I bring this up because I think it's relevant to the atheist community. It happens to us. And my question is, if you're in a position where you're expected to participate in some religious ceremony like that, what should you do? Because I've never really heard a coherent answer.
Did they know you were an atheist? Did they know you were an atheist?
No, I mean, they found out there. I mean, they didn't know up until then.
Because it would have shocked me if they'd asked you to lead the prayer as an atheist. If you're hiding, if you're in the closet, if you're not out and you're asked to do something like this, in my family it wouldn't have been too big of a deal because we had in a lot of Protestant denominations, especially in as Baptists, if I'd have been asked to lead a prayer, it might have been kind of expected as kind of a rite of passage thing, but if I would have expressed discomfort with it at all, they would have had somebody else do it.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't force somebody's relationship with God.
Yeah, and in the Christian church, I mean, I've been in it growing up, and I've been a pastor for many, many years. It's perfectly okay. Most people are not comfortable praying out loud. So if you are at a gathering, and I don't know your family, I don't know your situation, but I know, just like Matt said, if I were at a group and I were at a gathering, somebody asked me to say grace, I could say, you know, I'd rather not. Now, if you feel so led, you could say, no, I'd rather not because I'm an atheist.
Yeah.
But that's your choice. I mean, that's the decision you have to make. My family knows I'm an atheist now, and they had never, not a chance in you know where.
You can say it now.
I can say it now. Not a chance in hell that they would ask me to say a prayer. They will say plenty for me, and that's their choice and that's their belief. But.
I mean, it may depend a little bit on what denominations you're working with. I know that in my life, first of all, throughout as a Baptist, let's go to church for a minute. Throughout my walk with Christ, there were times where, even though I was still a believer and part of the church and in the family, where I would know that my walk with the Lord was not what it was supposed to be.
Right.
And during those times, I'm not supposed to be leading prayers and stuff.
Right.
It I'm not a proper reflection of Christ, and so I shouldn't be doing it. And so if I'd have been asked to give a prayer and I'd have said, I can't do that right now, my family's not going to immediately say, oh, he's an atheist.
Right.
They're going to say,
Probably
he knows that God's put a burden on him.
Yeah.
He's not right with God. We'll move on and we'll have somebody else do the prayer.
That's right.
But usually, it wasn't always a big deal anyway. I mean, maybe at Thanksgiving and Christmas where you were expected to give a mini sermon with prayer, but then it was always like my dad or somebody else doing it.
Yeah.
I got out before then. But, just saying you're not comfortable with it should be enough. And the people who pressure you after that, they're not just doing so because of their religion, they're doing it because they're dicks.
Okay.
Because pressuring people to speak publicly and do things after they've said they're not comfortable with it, that's harassment. Why would people who love you do that?
Yeah, okay, thank you for the response. I mean, Teresa, what you just explained there is pretty much what happened. I said I wasn't comfortable with it, then I eventually said I was an atheist, and it was just a bit awkward because they're rather fundamentalists, which I didn't know, and I'm an atheist, which they didn't know, but thank you for the insight there. I just wanted to say one more quick thing. Aaron, you mentioned Ray Comfort before, and I don't think you said this in announcements, but Aaron Raw did debate Ray Comfort on a program called Radio Paul. And if you search Aaron Raw v. Ray Comfort, it's the first thing that comes up. So.
Actually, we're searching for Aaron Raw right now. Come on down. Would this be the gentleman you're looking for?
Are you looking for him?
Hi, how you doing? Yeah. Sorry, Aaron. I know you're there. I don't see you on the stream yet because it's delayed. But it's an absolute honor to speak with all of you. I know you don't want people calling to say that, so I'll be done now. But meeting you, Aaron, is on my bucket list. And by the way, I was the guy that sent you the email that led you to Frank Turek's seminar. Thank you very much for all the work you guys are doing, and I hope to meet you in real life sometime. Thanks a lot.
You're going to have plenty of opportunities for that. Thanks, Sean. I'll get you on another time. We'll talk about Ray.
Okay.
Yeah, Aaron's here today. We had our back cruise and a lot of other stuff. You can get a chance to meet Aaron, by the way, at the, yes, applause for my friend, at the American Atheist National Convention here in Austin, Texas next year.
That's right. And
Dave's
he's my friend too, by the way.
I know.
You don't have exclusive rights to Aaron. He's mine too.
We're gonna arm wrestle over Aaron. Thanks, Sean. I appreciate the call.
We're gonna have an auction. We're gonna auction Aaron off. How's that work?
All right. Let's. I don't have a full list, so I think they're queuing up new callers. But we got David in Santa Clarita. How are you?
Hey, Matt. How you doing? Hi, Teresa.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, Matt. I have a quick question. I was watching one of your debates that you had with Jay Lucas.
Yeah.
It was on YouTube, and I was kind of curious during a question and answer at the end when he asked you, "Do you believe that we have universal human rights?" and you answered no. And he also asked you, "Do you believe that the audience members here have a universal right to life?" and you said no. And I was wondering if you can explain that no answer, because you didn't really explain it during the debate. So I was wondering if you can explain your position on whether we have universal human rights. And also, Teresa, if you want to jump in too, feel free to, you can answer the question as well.
Did he use the word universal or intrinsic?
I believe he said universal.
Yeah, and it might have been because in the discussions that I had with him, we had talked about it in terms of intrinsic human rights. And his position was, he was trying to get me to acknowledge that we have innate, intrinsic human rights, that they just exist. And I won't do that because I don't think it's true. I don't think that the mere existence of a human being in the universe entails that human necessarily has rights. Rights are something that are granted. They only have power to the extent that they're enforced. I mean, I did another debate with Abdu Murray in Amarillo, Texas, where we talked a little bit about rights as well. And he tried to say that, the whole screen went red. He tried to say that I mentioned that you could violate, or when you've killed someone, you've taken away their right to life. And he tried to use a little semantic trick to say that no, you've just violated their right to life. And the point that I should have made at the time, but didn't think of till afterwards, was to ask him, so the dead have rights then? Because there's no continuity there.
Right.
And he's implying that, oh, they still had those rights, you just violated them. No, you no longer exist, you don't have any rights. My view on this is that rights are something that are granted and enforced, and that it is silly to try to claim that there is some intrinsic thing that is a human being exists and therefore necessarily has these things, irrespective of what people recognize. Now, as far as how we normally term universal human rights, for example, the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights, that is an example of human beings declaring what we feel human rights should be. And in that sense, I'm supportive of that.
Okay. Teresa, do you have any, opinion on whether we have, or you feel like you believe we have universal human rights?
Well, since this is the first time I've heard of this discussion at all, or even thought about it, I'll be honest and say I haven't thought about that. I disagree with Matt just a little bit. I think that as human beings, that we do have, maybe not rights, but we do have responsibilities toward each other. And that could be different than having a human right, which is where a right is something that is extended toward you. Just like Matt said, it's something that's granted to you. It's a statement that says you will treat each other with dignity and respect. You will not take this person's life. You will not take this person's child away from them in kidnapping. But as human beings, we have a responsibility toward each other. You know, what tells me, and this is something that people say about atheists all the time, that we don't have any morals, we don't have a moral compass, we don't have any way of knowing what's right or wrong, which in a sense plays in with rights. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't have to know that taking Matt here and shooting him with a gun, nobody has to tell me that that's wrong. Am I taking his rights away? Well, his right to life, I guess. Am I violating his right? No. Not unless he lives through it, and then maybe I'm violating it because he's going to come back with a gun after me later. But I think that we have responsibilities as human beings toward one another. I think that we have a responsibility to act and behave like humans, and that if we did, in a perfect world, that things would look and be a lot different for us. Do I think it's going to happen? I'm a little more skeptical about that one.
Well, great. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your answer, Matt, because I just wanted to know why you would just say no. And I think you just made Jay sort of dumbfounded when you said no. You know,
yeah.
That
was actually part of the reason I did it, because it's one of those things in a debate. It was a very transparent line of argument. When you talk about, when you have debates about these things and you start to get specific about terms, it's very easy to ask a simple question that intuitively has one impression, and then as soon as you've said yes, it leads to, but such and such and such and such.
Right.
And I said no because I wanted to be able to clarify that while I think, I agree with Teresa that we have responsibilities, and I think that extends to the point where we have recognized the types of rights that are beneficial. And in some cases we've codified those, and in some cases we haven't yet, and we're not necessarily perfect or anywhere near it, but that there's this process towards a loftier goal. I'm also in agreement that because we're physical beings in a physical universe that follows physical rules, that there are scientific truths about what we classify as morality. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're there yet, but if I'd have just said, of course I think there's a universal intrinsic right to life, well, then where does that right come from? To the extent that it exists at all, which is really a bad way to phrase it because it doesn't exist as a thing, it's from us. It's from thinking beings recognizing our place in reality, the fact that our actions have consequences, and reaching conclusions about that. It is not, as Jay would have liked it, some externally granted right. which is what he was trying to do and what Abdu Murray also tried to do, that, you know, rights only have value because, you know, God gave them to us. Well, that's hogwash. I mean, it's nonsense. And it's the same way with morality, where even if there is a God and this God has some opinion on morality, I don't give a rat's ass what his opinion is, because what's moral or not moral isn't impacted in any way by his opinion of it. And if you think otherwise, then you're in the position of thinking that, okay, God could now say that rape is moral. It's morally correct to rape. Does it become that way? No. And everybody recognizes that. It's absurd. And yet they keep going down this divine command theory thing, even when they avoid and specifically say that, I'm not talking about divine command. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. If you have this idea that God is the author of morality, you are absolutely talking divine command theory, no matter how obfuscated you tend to make it with your modern theology. It's moronic.
Well, thank you very much. And also just a quick thing about your show. Actually, it's because of your show that I call myself an atheist. However, to my family, I cannot do that. And then when you guys are just talking about coming out to your family, it's like that's like something I cannot do. And I guess the closest thing I can, label myself to my family is I'm an agnostic theist. For me, I take comfort in knowing who I am now. I think it's because of your show. Like you said, I think you helped, take my hand and say, you know what, it's okay to call yourself an atheist, but to my family, I cannot come out, and that's just kind of the dilemma that I'm in. My friends know, but my family doesn't, and and for them, they're a very conservative family. It's like they can't know, and that's kind of like the double life. I think one of the things that you guys are talking about, that's kind of like the double life that I'm leaving. But
and that's okay too, by the way. Don't let anybody push you into coming out or announcing anything. I've said before, don't come out if you think it's going to impact your livelihood, your happiness, your job. It would be great if we lived in a world where everybody could be out about everything, where you could just be open about who you are and it wouldn't cause problems. We don't live in that world. But there are some of us who don't necessarily have that risk, or we've been outed. And there are people working to try to make the world the kind of place where it's not that big a deal to acknowledge that, yeah, I don't believe in this God stuff. And, a couple of years ago, there was the study that showed that the atheists were the least trusted minority in the United States. And yet just recently, a Pew poll showed that
I think it was Pew Research, yeah.
For the first time in history, more than 50% of Americans would vote for an atheist for president. In just a couple of years span. Now, okay, it's a poll, and maybe they talk to different people and everything else. There's no doubt that the world is changing. There's no doubt that the nuns, the people who don't subscribe to any religion, are growing and becoming more vocal and becoming more active and saying, no, by the way, I don't think you should be able to take away my rights just based on your religion. And yeah, you're free to believe whatever you want to believe, and you can practice and voice your opinion in the public square, but not on government property. You shouldn't be putting up monuments. You shouldn't be legislating in such a way that the people who don't share your beliefs are, second-class citizens. And some of us take it a step further and talk about, other human rights as well. It has nothing to do with atheism per se, but it's a recognition that we're trying to make the world a better place, and that starts with fairness and equality and not marginalizing people. And there's absolutely no reason that saying, oh, you believe in a God? Yeah, I don't. Should be the reason for dividing families. Should be the reason for wars and battles and fights and wasting time when our legislature should be actually working on bills that help people, and instead we are sitting around unanimously passing, let's slap in God We Trust up all over the state capitol. Have you got nothing better to do with the time? Has our society been so poisoned that pandering to the religious is the best use of the legislature's time? I find that just crazy. I can't wait for that to end. And I think we're moving towards it. Maybe not fast enough, but faster than we used to be.
Well, thank you very much. You guys just keep sending out the good word. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Oscar in Miami, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I wanted to ask about funerals. I'm doing a school project for them, and I was talking to some of my colleagues in the project, and I was told that atheists wouldn't have funerals because you guys believe in nothing?
Seriously?
What does a funeral have to do with believing in nothing? That would be my first question. I mean,
I don't know. I'm agnostic, but I was just wondering.
Yeah.
How would you guys deal with family problems in a funeral? Like if it was religious.
Sure. Well, first of all, saying we believe in nothing is not an accurate assessment. I think you'll find that most atheists believe in most of the things that most other people believe in, just not the supernatural God stuff.
Right.
I'm convinced that when I'm dead, it's over. I don't see any reason.
Well, you were just talking about the misunderstanding that a lot of people have of atheists and atheism.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that kind of ties into that. But I was wondering about if you're going to a funeral and there's going to be a lot of religious issues with that. How would you deal with that with people coming up to you and saying why are you even here or something like that?
I'm here because I'm celebrating the life of someone that I cared about, and I'm here to show compassion and empathy for the other people who love that individual and who now are experiencing pain. This is about being human. It doesn't matter what you think happened to somebody's body or their spirit, if you think they have one, after they're dead. This is a recognition that I spent time with this person and I'm going to miss them, and other people spent time with them and they're going to miss them. We're human beings. We interact with people. We're social creatures. That's why I would be at a funeral. Funerals have nothing to do, by the way, with religion, no matter how much religion they want to throw in there. It's all about the family, and it's all about social interaction, and it's all about helping people grieve. Now, religion does offer mechanisms that help people grieve, and I think they're lies, and I think those people would be better off if they had a proper understanding of reality, that the recognition that, by all accounts, I'm going to be dead when I'm dead, and that there's no soul and nothing to do, puts me in the position where I might treat people better in the first place. Did you have something to add to that on grief?
Yeah, I can speak with a little bit of recent experience. My dad died a month ago, and I attended his funeral because, he's my dad. I loved him. I can honestly say that going through that experience now with the knowledge I have, knowing that he's dead, he's gone, don't have to put my hopes and dreams into those empty promises of, I'll see him at some point in the future in some candy land in the sky. I think I went through this service, this funeral, this time better than I ever did before. My mother passed away some years ago. She had cancer, and that I was just, it took me so long, and I'm not over my dad dying, but it's a month out and I'm talking to you about it, and I'm not, a mess of tears and things, because I keep holding on and I keep longing for that, what's going to come later, and longing, I can't wait to see my dad again. No, my dad died. He's no longer in pain. I dealt with that. I dealt with it at that moment, at that time when we buried him, and I have closure and I can move on. So, maybe that will help you as you talk to your friends who are saying that we atheists can't have funerals or celebrate somebody's life, like Matt said, because we don't believe in anything. No, I believed in my dad. My dad was a good person. My dad loved me and I loved him, and that's a lot to believe in right there.
Yeah, and a couple of quick things. My grandmother died this past year. I went to that funeral. Nobody came up to me to ask why I was at the funeral. It's just kind of crazy, and yet my entire family knows. And actually, I wasn't there at that particular funeral to celebrate my grandmother's life. She was my grandma. I loved her. She's gone. I'll miss being able to talk to her. But that was not it. I went there, as I mentioned before, in support of the family, in support of the rest of my relatives who, are grieving. And there were people who knew her better than I did, who are going to grieve more than I am. But also, when you get to atheists in funerals, and you ask atheists, what kind of funeral do you want? Well, first of all, I'm not going to have any say in it. Well, I can say now, but if they don't do what I want, there's nothing I can do about it, and it's not going to hurt my feelings. So if you guys want to chop me up in pieces and,
I know a lot of people donate their body to science.
Yep.
Would you...
I am fine with donating my body to science and my organs and parting them out, and I'd like to do something that is seemingly more responsible with whatever's left of my body. Make as best use of this carcass as you can once I'm gone, and then dispose of the rest of it in an environmentally friendly and sound fashion, and have some kind of a party. You can cry if you want to, but I'd prefer that people just look back and say, yeah, you know, he was a bit of an ass sometimes, but he did it right quite often. And hey, you remember that time when? You remember that time when? That's the kind of thing that I would want to take place, assuming anybody even shows up. You know, I might die in December here when the entire world ends.
Well, then, if the world ends, none of us will show up. We'll all have the same.
There won't be any funerals.
Right, and I guess we'll all be cremated because. Isn't it the asteroid that's supposed to hit the Earth from Mayan prophecy, or is that?
I don't know exactly what they're claiming this week. But,
I don't know either. I can't keep up with it.
We're going to have a hell of a time come Christmas when everybody's still here.
Yeah.
And the Christians will be celebrating Jesus and the fact that the Mayans were wrong all in the same week.
Well, they celebrated Harold Camping being wrong several times, so I guess we'll live through this one too.
Cool. Thanks a lot for calling, Oscar. All right. So it used to be when the show originally started, or actually when I first started on the show, in the past it had run at various times for various links, and we had a 90-minute show, which was, I thought, just perfect. We just hit the 90-minute mark. And now there's nobody on the phone lines because we've been doing an hour show for the last couple of years. So that means that since we have this ginormous studio audience, until somebody else gets queued up on the phone, somebody can move over to that mic and ask Teresa a question, or me, but preferably Teresa since she's our guest. And in the meantime, I'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's going on while somebody moseys up there. The ACA has a building, as I mentioned before. We've got the floors refinished and have bookshelves and stuff in there. We also have a couple of computers that were donated to do AV stuff, and I moved the audio equipment from the Nonprofits podcast over to the building. Over the next week or so, we are going to be setting up all the equipment, turning the back room of the building into a miniature studio so that we are never dependent on the public access studio to do a show to the internet. And we, on the 30th, which would be next week, next Sunday, normally there'd be no show in the studio here because it's a fifth Sunday. And for whatever reason, you get 4 weeks in a month, and they save the fifth for something else. I don't know. There will be a show next week, or we are going to try to have a show next week, streaming only for the interwebs folks, live from the building. And we're doing this for a number of reasons. Number one, it gets us out from under the rules that are imposed in the studio that tell me what I can and can't talk about. So we'll go back to talking about whatever we want. Number two, we can have an hour show, an hour and a half show, a 2-hour show. We can have 2 shows. We can have 5 shows. We can have shows with me and Tracy. We can have shows with Jeff. We can get Lene on. We can get all these other people who've been asking to come down and be a part of the show on. Who knows? There may be a lot more. The other thing is that during the Texas Free Thought Convention next month, Richard Dawkins, wow, the phone line's all lit up. Richard Dawkins will be in town for that, but he will not be here on Sunday. And while I can't promise anything, I have been talking with the RDF. We're going to try to set up and do a special edition of the Atheist Experience from the building with Richard Dawkins at some point while he's here. Like I said, I can't promise. It may not happen. We could have any number of technical problems, and his schedule is crazy. There's a fundraiser and a talk and other stuff, but we're going to do what we can. Yes, sir, you had a question.
I just wanted to know about...
Can we hear that, Mike?
Can you hear it?
We'll see. Go ahead.
Okay. My question is the reactions that you had on a personal level when you're talking about death threats and all like that. Just some of the more personal reactions of the people that you knew, and how strange or violent or estranged things became, if you could elaborate on that some.
Okay.
So in case you couldn't hear the microphone for the people out at home, Arn was asking her to elaborate a little on the reactions that she had from people during this process. So go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, there were those that were pretty angry and pretty upset. And part of me, I can understand it. This is, I guess, for somebody that's raised in the South, that's deeply religious, that's a pastor, it's probably the worst news that you could get, that this person is an atheist. Some of the closest relationships that I had, the ones that I honestly thought would weather the storm, they were sad, they were upset, they were angry, they lashed out. how could you, why, and one of the biggest ones for people that were really, really close to me, their response was, why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't you say something to me about this? And, you know, my thought is what would have happened if I had said something to you? What would have happened if I tried to talk to you? How would that conversation have even started? Yes, I'm your friend. I have done all these things with you. I've done these mission trips. I've been to all these places evangelizing and been this pastor person for all these years. But by the way, I don't believe it. You know, what would have been that response? Maybe I should have talked to him. I don't know. But I felt like I didn't have that choice for whatever reasons. And I know I'm not the only person. Matt mentioned the Clergy Project, and the Clergy Project is filled with almost 400 pastors now who are either former, like I am, who've come out of the closet, but a very large number of them who are still trapped. And that one thought keeps coming out is, I don't know who to talk to. You know, how do you start that conversation? How do you take that huge risk? I mean, besides the fact of how do you open that door up and talk about it, you risk not only what their reaction is, but you risk being outed. And that has happened to some of the folks that I know who are in the Clergy Project. So
yeah, and as a minister, talking to people about this is your livelihood.
Yeah.
It's the reason why there are people in the Clergy Project who are still in the pulpit. It's because it's not that they don't recognize that they're atheists. These are people struggling with the fact that I'm getting up there and perhaps having to lie, or I'm tailoring my sermons in such a way so that I tend to avoid lying as much as possible, because this is my entire social structure. This is my livelihood. I have no jobs. I have in some cases, I have no skills outside of here that translate to anything else.
Yeah.
It's incredibly difficult. And one of the things you mentioned was about how people react to one of the worst things you can be is an atheist.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is kind of twofold. It's one, you're going to hell, but you're leading people to hell too.
Yeah.
If you're talking about your atheism and you're actively talking about, you know, that you don't accept the claims of these religious groups, or in fact that some of these claims are false, demonstrably, or absurd, you're leading people to hell according to them, and you're now part and parcel with the enemy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You are the enemy. I mean, or at least in the enemy's camp, and that's not the place you want to be. So, it was a great question, and it's something I think that we really need to talk about, is that there's those varying degrees of anger and acceptance and the varying responses. I would like to say that I do have a friend and her husband. I won't say their names because it seems that being associated with me can be dangerous as well. So Matt, I don't know if I'd sit that close or not. But,
I'm all right.
They have been my friends. This person is still, well, I won't say too much because I don't want to reveal them, but they have stood by me. They have called me, loved me, you know, maintained that friendship, maintained that relationship. They didn't care if we think differently, and they don't care about any of that. All they care about is that bond and that relationship. And so that, you know, just to say, yeah, you'll lose a lot, but then there'll be those little, not little people, but these huge people that still say, I love you and I care for you. Now, true, it's one couple, but you know, it's something there. So, man, it's just tough, you know.
I was thinking, because we've only got like 20 minutes left of the show, and by the way, the phone lines have filled back up, so we'll get right back to that. You know, we recorded the talk you gave yesterday. That'll be up on our side at some point in the near future. But also, you just recorded like 2 episodes of Atheist Viewpoint or something?
Yeah, two episodes of Atheist Viewpoint. Actually, there's 3. It's crazy. One talks about my story on Atheist Viewpoint, but then my brother came up and was on the show. And this is a whole nother couple of shows for you, so I won't say too much about it. But just, go to Atheist Viewpoint on atheist.org, and you can watch the 2 shows that involve my brother and I. My brother is out. He's gay. He's married. And he came into town to have a conversation about what it was like for him to come out to me while I was a fundamentalist Christian and a pastor. And then the acceptance we went through with each other toward that, and then for me in turn to come out to him as an atheist, and just it's just a lot of stuff. Like I said, you have to go on to atheist.org and watch those 2 episodes. I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, for those who aren't aware, Atheist Viewpoint is the TV show that American Atheist puts out where Dave Silverman tries to pretend that he's me. Okay, that's an inside joke for Dave. It's a great resource from American Atheist, a shorter, simpler podcast. Well, actually, you're not podcasting, but that may come in the future, where you can go find out more from American Atheists as well. Lots of good conversations go on there.
Oh yeah.
But I'm gonna poke at Dave all the time because I can't just sit here and shill his stuff without poking him a little bit too. So we got Jessica in Asheville. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Doing pretty well.
I know this has been covered before, and it probably would have been better by email, but I'm an agnostic atheist. Over the last couple of years, I've come to be this way, but I'm still afraid of hell.
Okay. What exactly do you mean by that? Because I've heard people talk about they still have, nightmares and waking cold sweats, and other people are just, have concerns that they might, not be correct and are still in danger of hell. So, what are we talking about?
Probably the second one.
Sure.
I'm just afraid of making a mistake and then when I die, burning eternally.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I find most foul about Christianity in particular, but a variety of religions. So, which hell are you worried about avoiding?
The one of the Bible.
Yeah, and how much does it bother you that you're not worried about any of the other ideas of hell? That that was supposed to be kind of redundant, and it's pointed to maybe help you out a little bit, because one of the things that I realized when I thought about the idea that I'm worried about hell. Which hell? Whose hell? The one within Christianity, and which denomination of Christianity, by the way, because there are people like Billy Graham doesn't believe in a literal hell. Billy Graham he's an annihilationist. It's one of the reasons why some of the other ministers have gone after him and questioned him. Mm-hmm. So there's a number of different ideas about what hell actually means, whether it's fire and torment, as those Southern Baptists like myself used to believe, or whether it's eternal separation from God, or whether it is an end to your existence. And the religions can't get it sorted out at all. And plus there are other, not necessarily hell, but other afterlife consequences from other religions. And I realized that I hadn't given a moment's thought to any of the rest of them, and that I was only worried about the one that I was most familiar with and the one that I'd been raised with. And that kind of made it easier for me to stop being worried about it at all, because I had no good reason to worry about one hell more than another, or one idea of hell more than another. I don't know that there's an easy way to get over that, or if maybe that's one of the easier ways. It's difficult, and I'm glad that you're not in the first category, because I have heard from people who, I'm an atheist. I'm a fairly serious, hardcore atheist. Now, don't believe in gods, think this is all bunk and everything else. But because of the indoctrination that I went through, I wake up in cold sweats, terrified of hell. Though I really, my heart goes out to those people, and it shows the poisonous nature of the indoctrination and what we're doing to kids by telling them that they're destined for this place unless they do something different.
Well, I was raised Southern Baptist from when I was a baby, so it's the fire and torment that I'm afraid of.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Well, think of it this way. It can't happen. If all you want to take is the Bible, and all you want to take is Christianity as you were taught, all right, if you take those things and you just take the Bible says that God is love, that Jesus came and that He died, and He did this because He loved everybody, right? For God so loved the whole world that He gave His only Son. So how can you reconcile that with, okay, I love you so much, I'm going to send you to hell and I'm going to burn you forever and ever and ever? Those two things don't make sense. So one has to be true. One has to be true, and that makes one false, or both have to be false. My opinion, both have to be false, because if God is going to send you to hell and burn you forever and torment you forever because you can't figure it all out as a human being, then why in the world do we want to believe in that God in the first place? Why do we want to follow that God in the first place?
That's like
saying, okay, Adolf Hitler, you're going to torture me and you're going to torment me, and so, but you promise that you're going to feed me every day, even though it's soupy, mushy, something or other. So I'm going to worship you and I'm going to follow you because I'm afraid that you're going to torment me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to willingly follow that type of a person?
Right.
So, and that was one of the things that really helped me with the concept of hell was those thoughts of just rationally taking all that away and thinking about what kind of divine being or deity would dangle that over you and say, okay, you're going to follow me or it's going to be torment forever and ever and ever and ever, which I think forever is a pretty long time. I mean,
yeah, I'm in a position where I might actually believe that God exists, but could never worship him, and don't think he actually does exist, don't think that hell exists, but if I'm wrong, there's absolutely nothing I can do about it.
Right,
because
that's
there's
a good point.
you've been offered no reasonable, viable pathway to the proper afterlife that your brain can accept. There's no evidence for it, and so you're stuck. And then you're talking about a God who's not only going to burn you forever, but he's doing so because you were incapable of accepting without evidence the ridiculous claims that he requires of you. And I just, this type of God, you know, it doesn't mesh with reason, doesn't mesh with the evidence, doesn't mesh with morality, and get mad. You know, if you can't get over the fear of it, screw that God. You know, you can't do anything about it anyway. I can't stop somebody from stepping on a bug, and neither can the bug. But you know what? I don't care. You know, that guy's. I will die, and if I find out when I'm dead that the biblical God was real or some other God was real, and they want to torture me forever in hell, you know, nothing I can do about that. But I'll sit down there tortured, knowing that I was a better person than they could ever be.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I also don't think, I think that the standard biblical model that I was raised with means that nobody is in heaven at all. And the reason for that is really simple. My mom loves me. And if my mom, as a Christian, goes to heaven, as she thinks she will, then when she's in heaven and I'm not, well, if I end up in heaven, then the Bible's wrong about a whole bunch of other things. But if I'm not there, then my mom should be sad. But there is no sadness in heaven.
Right.
Which means that one of several things has to happen. Either this God has to change my mom into somebody who's no longer sad that I'm in hell, in which case she's not my mom, which means my mom's not in heaven. Or he has to wipe my mom's memories so that she doesn't remember any of this,
yeah.
Which means that my mom's not in hell because my mom is also that package of memories. The fact of the matter is, if you read through the Bible the way it is, there's no way that anybody, that this dichotomy of heaven and hell could possibly exist, because nobody's going to get there. There may be some facsimile of my mom in some wonderful afterlife, but my mom's not getting there. Neither is anybody else. So that place is pretty empty. Now, it could be possible that everybody goes straight to hell, in which case you're going to be with everybody anyway, so you might as well have fun.
Alrighty.
Yeah, exactly. That's my thoughts exactly.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you.
Sure. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We've got Katie in Sherman, Texas.
Hello.
Hey.
Oh, how are you guys today?
We're good. We're doing a long show today, and it feels awesome.
Yeah, I know. So I called in a couple months ago while I was still over in Japan, and what would you know, Skype dropped my call. So here I am again, and wanted to talk a little bit about what it was like for me being an atheist in America, then being an atheist in Japan, and then being an atheist in Korea for a little while, and how absolutely insane it was in Korea.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in Japan, only like 10% of the population claims a religion, and like less than 1% are Christian, and of that 1%, about half are foreigners living in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really nothing for me to be an atheist over there. It was more unusual the fact that I was a foreigner who was an atheist, but nobody really questioned me being an atheist. Then I went to Korea for a month over spring break, and it's almost exactly the opposite picture there. Pretty much everybody claims a religion, but they're either Protestant or Buddhist.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I was just riding on the train one day, and this priest comes up and tries to convert me, and he, like, refuses to believe that I'm an atheist because I'm white and from America, and everybody in America is Christian. So he said, I'm quite certain that you're going to come to Jesus before you leave Korea. That obviously didn't happen. So that's that, I guess. But then I went back to Japan, and the university that I was studying abroad at was a Jesuit university, but hardly anybody was actually Catholic.
I think of all the people who identify as Catholic, hardly any of them are Catholic either.
Yeah, kind of like my dad's side of the family there, but...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if you're not in Vatican City, you might not actually be a Catholic.
But, like, I was in the choir at my school, and we would have to sing, masses every Friday, but only about 5 people in the entire choir were actually Catholic who would go and take communion. All the rest of us were atheists, maybe Buddhists, who knows.
Were they in Latin?
We had to sing in Latin and Japanese. We sang out of, like, the Liber Usuralis in Japanese, which was fun.
Yeah, I think I could maybe have fun with like, singing hymns in a foreign language, because I could make up what I was singing.
Good.
Yep.
Until I actually understood the language, and then, of course, that'd kill it all off for me again. It wouldn't be as much fun.
Yeah, because you wouldn't know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably could do that.
Anyway.
Kind of breaks down when you are in the country because that's the language you speak, but...
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for calling in, Katie. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Keep up the good work, guys.
Take care. All right, we're coming close. We got like 7 minutes or so left, but we've got Elijah calling in. How are you?
Hello?
Yes, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Great, thanks. Welcome to the show.
I love this show. I've been watching it for months since I came to the U.S. So we all know that the Christian religion is highly inspired by other myths before it. And I was wondering what's the next step to Christianity. And I found this guy on YouTube. He's in Nigeria, I think. He's called Prophet TB Joshua. And he's doing exorcism on spirits taking over people. We have here the spirit of the sea, which is basically Poseidon. We also have the spirit of the lion taking over people, exorcism. I mean, the devil is so desperate that he's taking over pigeons as well.
Pigeons?
Yeah, and he has the spirit of destruction, which is Shiva the Destroyer, and he's doing exorcism on these people on TV.
So this guy's merged a whole bunch of religious ideas into whatever he can get somebody to believe.
No. He's a Christian. He's a Christian apologist or something, and he's doing exorcism on people on TV.
Well, if he's exercising Poseidon and Shiva, I'm not sure that he's a Christian like that I would recognize.
Well, he's not saying Shiva. He's saying, for example, spirit of destruction, but we all know that's Shiva.
Yeah, I don't think he intends it to be Shiva. I mean, I've had experience with this, doing mission trips and things with more charismatic denominations that believe in a lot of that stuff. They call out spirits of all kinds of stuff. Spirit of destruction, be gone from this person. Spirit of addiction. Spirit of anything. Spirit of liking chocolate too much. And they would
as well.
Yeah, they would take that opportunity, and whether they believed it or not, I don't know. I can't say. But yeah, they would try to cast the spirit out. There had to be some reason for them why a person was not believing or doing something, and they rejected any kind of scientific explanation. I can't tell you how many times I've seen somebody try to remove the spirit of cancer, to cast out the spirit of cancer from somebody. Now, is cancer a spirit? Is it a demonic force that comes on somebody? No, it's a disease. How do you get cancer out of your body? How do you deal with cancer? You go to the doctor. You have surgery, you have chemotherapy, you have radiation, you take the treatments that are available to you. You don't go to your priest or this prophet Joshua and say, would you exorcise the demon of cancer from me? Now you may. I can guarantee you your results are probably not going to be what you're looking for.
No, I'm not looking for him. I'm an atheist myself, but I found it funny that people still believe in those kind of things. I mean, those people are walking around, and he goes, "Hey, you have the spirit of a lion," and then he starts doing exorcism on the guy. And I mean, those are actors, really good actors. If you look into the videos, they're extremely funny. But I mean, people still believe in this kind of stuff.
They do, and you know, it's sad in a sense because they're putting so much trust and faith in the hope that that will be the answer and the solution to their problems. And they may feel better, they may feel better as they walk away, but you know, there hasn't been a proven case that after they walk away that anything has really changed. It's just kind of this placebo effect that they, oh yes, God has touched me, God has healed me, God has stripped this demon or this spirit away from me, but the cancer's still there. You know, the disease or the what, I don't know what a spirit of destruction would look like. I mean, honestly. Oh well, we need to get Prophet Joshua to come up here and take care of Matt.
I think it's really good because we're seeing kind of, you know, we know religions have evolved. You know, what Protestantism was at the beginning isn't what it is now.
Yeah.
Hell, what the Baptist Church thinks now isn't what it thought 50, 60 years ago, by and large.
No.
You know, once upon a time, you know, if Teresa tried to preach to anybody, she'd have probably been burnt at the stake. But
I think many of my predecessors were.
And yet all of this is within the same religion, supposedly, pointing to the same holy book. And what it's really a testament to is, you know, I used to talk about how religions have like built-in protection mechanisms and reinforcement devices and all that, but that implies that there was some intended construction of those things, and I don't think that that's the case at all. I think what we're seeing is human beings, their ability to not let go of their cherished beliefs, and so I will morph it as necessary. I will do it begrudgingly, and you will drag me kicking and screaming into the next century. But, you know, oh, your science discovered something? Let me go back and read through my book and see if I can find something that sounds like, or that I can make sound like it knew something similar once upon a time. Then all of a sudden I've reinforced my belief. Oh, we found out that, ooh, you know, there may not be a hell. Let me kind of go back and review all this and change what I believe. We see this over and over and over again. And it's about, as I said, you know, kind of at the outset today, it's about a discomfort with ignorance. It's about, we're terrified of what the prospect of what might happen after we're dead, which I wish we could, I think we could do a lot better if we just realized nothing's going to happen after you're dead.
Yeah.
There is no after you're dead. But I got to let you go because we're out of time. I appreciate the call. As a reminder, some of us are going to be going to this place called Threadgills after the show, and I don't know if they're going to have room for everybody, but we'll see what we can do. Next week, we're going to try and do a show live from the building. Thank you so much, Teresa, for coming down here and doing this. This is awesome.
Yeah,
Guys,
thank
thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thank you, guys.
That raucous applause that you're hearing is the huge studio audience that came to town for our annual Bat Cruise. We've booked the venue for next year. It's September 28th. Mark your calendars now. Boat only holds 200, and we'd like to fill it next year. We'll see what's going on. And maybe we'll see you at Skepticon or at the American Atheist Convention or the Texas Free Thought Convention. Thanks to the folks who make the show actually happen, including the long format 2-hour show, Shelley right there.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Piece of cake.
Yeah. That was cool.